Aw, yeah. What's up, nerds? Y'all ready for this?
Oh, yeah. There's only one thing that can bring this world together, and that begins with you. But where it begins with you, not you. I'm gonna tell you what word it is. Usury. On the dance floor. Get that ass up. Bankers, get on the floor. Bankers, make the people poor. Bankers, get more paid. Bankers, get more paid. Get more paid. I wanna see your ass poor. CEOs, yeah, I'm talking to you. Get more hoes, get more paid, get more votes, get more laid. I wanna see the CEOs ruining lives to the beat. Ruin those lives in 141 BPMs. Oh yeah. Sweet cool. Sweet cool. Where's the interest rates? I wanna see the bankers on the floor. I wanna see your ass poor. Make it clap. Make it fiat clap. Shake that ass. Usury. On the dance floor. More fiat cash in my bank account. Bankers, get on the floor. Bankers, make the people poor. Bankers, get more paid. Bankers,
Aw, yeah. What's up? Welcome, everybody. It's been some time since we revisited some movies and some franchises that I covered a long time ago. I thought it'd be fun to go back and check them out again, especially given there is a new Alien series called Alien Earth, which is pretty good. It's, I think, 4 or 5 episodes in, and we have been watching it. And there was a little bit more depth and symbolism and topics discussed that I didn't expect. Not that this series isn't worth analyzing. I think I covered it in Esoteric Hollywood 2. But this one is pretty revealing because we now have within the screenplay, within the actual dialogue, explicit references to transhumanism, explicit references to things like MK Ultra in a series that you wouldn't expect. And you might think I'm crazy. What do you mean MK Ultra and Alien? Yes. I kid you not. I will demonstrate that in a moment. We covered Alien in a podcast, I want to say 7 years ago. So I did Alien 1, 2, 3, 4, and then maybe Prometheus and Covenant, or yeah. but we haven't looked at Romulus, and we haven't looked at Alien Earth. So Jamie and I thought, why don't we go back and check these out and see if we missed anything, if there's any updates, any new information, any fresh takes, because a lot's happened in 7 or 8 years since I did this back when I was live streaming from my Florida, my first Florida place when I was testing out Florida. And I would say yes, there were several things that I missed. For one, I had either didn't know or forgotten that, did you know Alien takes place in the Blade Runner universe? There's quite a few references actually that prove and demonstrate this within the series, the franchises themselves, where they cross-reference one another with different characters. And I don't remember if I never knew that or I forgot that, but I don't think I mentioned that in the book. But of course, the obvious reason why that is because Ridley Scott, of course, did Blade Runner, and Ridley Scott did Alien 1. And I think Ridley Scott has some degree of association with some of the later Alien installments. And then I realized, actually, if I'm going to talk about MK Ultra and their connection, the connection that comes up pretty explicitly in Alien Earth, I need to talk about John Wick Ballerina, because that was another movie. I thought, oh, this is just going to be a goofy action movie. And we actually did a stream on John Wick back when the last one came out, or whenever that was, a few years ago. This one was actually more explicit, and once again, we have the cult theme with the sort of trauma-based mind control patterns, etc. So we're going to talk about Ballerina, and we're going to talk about the Alien franchise and Alien Earth, having it revisited it. If you guys are not familiar, in Esoteric Hollywood 1, I do talk about the Alien PSYOP, fake and Galians. That makes up the second chunk of the book. So I begin, I think, with talking about 2001: A Space Odyssey, the last of the Kubrick analyses that goes really in depth. And then the next section is Spielberg's Android Space Brothers, where I tie in AI, Spielberg's propaganda, and the alien mythology. We go back into H.G. Wells. We go back into the early sci-fi writers that you probably have all heard of, that are pretty much you could call them kind of the prophets of the new tech era, right? Kind of like we have the prophets of the Bible, we have the authors of the four Gospels. You could look at some of these figures as kind of the prophetic figures of the religion of scientism and technocracy and transhumanism of the age that we're going into. Of course, we have high-level Freemason, atheist H.G. Wells, the socialist member of the Fabian Socialist Society. We have L. Ron Hubbard, founder of Scientology. Of course, he went through the ranks of Crowley's OTO cult, then created his own cult religion based around alien mythos, exotheology, we might call it. Jules Verne played a big role. Robert Heinlein, whose works were actually studied at the Army War College, if you didn't know. Edgar Rice Burroughs. I mean, there's many of these figures. I'm sure you're all familiar with all these. I'm not going to rehearse all of the famous PKD, of course, famous Gnostic, Aldous Huxley, Brave New World. So science fiction becomes kind of the default religion of the soy man of the new era, the new aeon. And it wasn't accidental that within the sci-fi sections, I included significant sections and mentions of Dr. Louis Jolyon West of MK Ultra fame, Dr. Ewan Cameron of MK Ultra fame, because science fiction, as we pointed out, is way more powerful for inculcating and propagandizing than science so-called fact. Many, many, many more people are going to be watching James Cameron's blockbuster Aliens, the sequel, part 2, than would ever read a book by boring-ass Bertrand Russell. And the establishment has always understood that. And so they knew that the best way to propagandize people was to actually fill the fiction and support and promote science fiction, and thus propagandize in that way. Fill the science fiction with propaganda. So it only makes sense that my chapter would culminate with Ray Kurzweil and talking about the Borg from Star Trek and things like that. And then I move on to talk about films like E.T., all those classics, Close Encounters. Again, a lot of this is AI. This is all Spielberg stuff. And if you think that it sounds odd that you would get transhumanism and MKUltra associated, it's not at all, because the mainline texts that have discussed the MKUltra projects, and as we saw in my stream a couple days ago, this was actually dozens of projects. You've heard me say this for many, many years, and we actually went through the list the other day of all of the different projects from all the different universities of the 7 or 8 boxes of documents that were declassified and gotten a hold of. Supposedly there's another batch that we don't even know about, but we can deduce quite a bit from the documents that were listed. And we saw it was pretty wild, didn't we? Saw it everything from implantable chips, experiments with, John K. Lilly type stuff with the dolphins and LSD, animals, mind control, hypnosis, sexual deviancy, you name it. It's and dozens, of course, obviously dealing with drugs. For reference, let me see if I can pull that back up again, because I think I have it here. Let's see, where did I send that to? Yeah, it should be in here. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but it is relevant to look at it again, because this came up. Here it is, yeah. In regard to the recent TRANZ events. So let's take a look at some of the declassified studies to remind you and to show you, how these clearly connect. Box number 1 of the Artichoke documents, and Artichoke is just like a broader chunk of the MKUltra documents. You'll notice that we have discussions of the Office of Naval Research, depressants, schizophrenia, alcoholism. So a lot of this is done at academic university settings, right? So some of it is at like Vacaville prison facilities in Kentucky. Some of it is psychiatric institutions. Some of it is fronts that were created by the CIA, like the Human Ecology Fund. Some of it's at corporate settings. Some of it is in collusion with the mafia in terms of Operation Midnight Climax. So quite a few of the projects ended up being about LSD. Here's some really odd ones, though, we thought that were pretty funny, right? Like apartment rental studies. I don't know why the CIA and MKUltra was studying apartment rentals, but maybe they were prepping for the future when no one would own homes and everyone would have to rent apartments, and how to maximize apartment rentals for the normies. A lot of studies of hypnosis. Now here you see Fort Detrick. Now what happens is that when MKUltra gets shut down, it actually switches into MK Search and MK Delta at biowarfare and military locales like Fort Detrick. And so that's exactly what we see here. In fact, here's 3 whole sub-projects, or 3 versions of a sub-project, 30, just at Fort Detrick. And what we know about that was that this is where it starts to turn into studies about androids, studies about cyborgs, studies about human body modification and implantable versions of RFID, and nowadays, of course, it would be microchips or nanotech. So that's just a scratching the surface. Speaking of Dr. David Patrick Harry, here's a MKUltra study on Amanita muscaria. I'm gonna need your mascara right now, because I'm about to turn into a girl boy. Because I went through MKUltra. I'm gonna need your mascara right now. Amanita muscaria. Here's even finances. So botanicals, a lot of this is like studying entheogens, LSD research again. CIA safe houses, that's interesting. Drug trafficking networks comes up. Sensory deprivation tanks. This is like the John C. Lilly, floating in the tank Joe Rogan type stuff. More LSDs. A lot of stuff I don't know what these things are. Pfeiffer, Atlanta. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's pharmaceuticals or something. Pharmacology, botanicals, sleep studies, insomnia studies, alcohol and sleep studies, human ecology. That's the one that a lot of people are familiar with and reference. Human Ecology Foundation. This is an odd one. Hungarian refugees. No idea what that is. Sounds. I mean, maybe they were actually studying like human population migration, like we talked about yesterday. I mean, could be. I think a lot of these are available. We could go and see. I know, for example, we did find the other day the Subproject 120, which is about witchcraft, right? So they were studying witchcraft. We did find and read the actual essay on the stream 2 days ago, or 2 streams back, I should say. Allergies. So they were studying allergies, telecontrol. I don't know what that is. That sounds interesting. Telecontrol, like controlling people through telephone triggers. I mean, who knows what that is? Schizo studies. I can believe that one. Studying biophysics in the central nervous system. Remember the gateway process when they declassified that odd document, which had everything from David Lynch style transcendental meditation in it to biofeedback to yoga. I think all of that was part of the gateway process. And if you recall, Dr. David Patrick and I did an entire stream on that gateway process document. That also overlapped with Project Stargate, if you remember. Let's see if we can get that one to come up, because that will actually overlap very well with what we're talking about today. I know a lot of people thought this was a really good stream. Yeah, here it is. I think it was. It was very insightful. Adjacent to all the topics that we're discussing. By the way, if you want to support the stream, you can do so via Super Chats. Super Chats are done through Streamlabs. You can use the Streamlabs link pinned in the chat or in the show description, or you can use YouTube to stream to Super Chat natively through YouTube. So a couple more things, if we see anything. Look, African attitudes. Damn, she got an attitude right up. So they went from witch doctor studies in Subproject 121 to African attitudes. Talking about sassy. That sister is sassy right now. Woo! Let the CIA put a little bit of sass on her ass right now. Let that girl work it. Work it, girl. Get sassy now. I missed that one the other day. African attitude studies. What the hell? Personality theories. We've talked about how a lot of people don't know that the INTF, INJ, that all actually comes out of MK Ultra, the personality classification systems. More safe houses. Bird disease. Bird diseases. Here's one. ESP research. We saw there's also parapsychology comes up. So Peter Venkman is up in there. African attitudes. Maybe it's how to have an attitude. You ever think about that? Funding mechanisms for MK Ultra is one of the documents. How do we pay for all this crazy shit? Vacaville facility. It's a classic reference to California Vacaville Mind Control Facility. There it is, right there. We have a lot more references to Bluebird, Artichoke, cybernetics. See, there you go. Look at that. Told you. So box number 6 includes references to MK Ultra studies in cybernetics. Now, that's just one example. There's many examples in here. So you get the idea that, you get the point, hopefully, that there is a direct parallel between MK Ultra and transhumanism. I mean, if you think about it, like transitioning into being cybernetic androids or whatever, cyborgs, that's exactly what these studies are pertaining to, many of them. So mind control is directly related to all the stuff that we're talking about today. Cold War studies, Counterculture and the LSD studies. Interesting. It would be really interesting to take a few years and read as much of these as you could. I mean, sure, it's thousands of pages. You probably couldn't get through all of these in your lifetime, but it would be interesting to go through as many of these as you could. There's just so many documents. And this backs up what I was saying when I did my live stream a few years ago on MKUltra projects in Australia alone, which were vast and numerous. And that was almost an untapped, unknown area that we found a guy's book that he just randomly kind of uploaded. And I printed his book out and read the whole book. It was fascinating. I forget the name of it, but I did a members stream that you can find on my Rockfin or for the members in the members section on MKUltra studies that nobody was familiar with. All right, so here's that. And I don't know if I think we should just take these in the order that they came out because it's totally confusing. And we're not going to be talking about the chronology of the films anyway. But the actual chronology of the films is completely confusing. I had to list it out because it's so confusing. So basically, the first chronologically within the story is Prometheus. So Prometheus, it takes place in the year 2100. No, wait. It doesn't say what year it's supposed to take place. Alien Covenant is 2104. Alien Earth takes place in 2120. And then we get Ripley, and Jonesy and Harry Dean Stanton and all those guys. That takes place in 2122. And then you get Alien Romulus in 2142. But this list is actually leaving out Alien 3. I don't know why. Hey, Jamie? And then we have Alien Resurrection, which takes place 200 years after Alien 3, the Prison Planet installment. So let's just take these chronologically as they came out. That's a lot less confusing than the actual story's timeline. And then I'll mention the Blade Runner parallels and all that. But in the original Alien trailer, what's fascinating is that you kind of get the symbology of what the entire series is going to be focused on, which you might not expect, which is actually body horror. I'm not a huge fan of body horror movies. There's a few that are pretty good, but the series isn't actually about alien entities per se. I mean, that's part of the theme, but the symbology and the immediate context of the films is actually about giving birth and the survival of the fittest. We talked about this in my part 2 when I did a very in-depth analysis of Aliens, the sequel to Alien. And at the same time as I was writing that, I was actually reading the Collins Brothers' excellent book, Invoking the Beyond, which has the best 400-page chunk refutation of all alien propaganda. I don't mean the movie Alien, but the idea of UFOs and aliens is critiqued in a very profound way in the Collins Brothers book. I'm just trying to find my aliens analysis here. Yeah. They point out that writer Dan O'Bannon and others involved in the process of creating the original story with Ridley Scott intentionally noted that they wanted to reference human reproduction and human survival, right, as itself a kind of a grape scenario. And so the face huggers actually have intentional. I never even knew this until I read this in the Collins Brothers book. The face huggers in Alien actually have this sort of Skittles homoerotic thing going on. It's supposed to be kind of a combination because they have a kind of a little vajayjay, and they have their tail, which forcibly goes down your throat. And this is supposed to evoke this idea, that like there's something inherently grapey about human reproduction or something, right? Which is odd because that sounds kind of Gnostic, but also it makes sense because the mythos of the alien universe in this whole world is actually Gnostic. I know that comes up all the time, but the reason it's Gnostic is precisely because humans, we find out later in the Prometheus installment, are actually an accidental creation. I think if we go back to, it says Baphomet. We'll talk about the Baphomet imagery and influence on the actual design of the xenomorph because that's from H.R. Giger. H.R. Giger was, of course, a self-confessed Satanist. He was interested in Crowley. He drew Crowley, right? And he drew actually quite a few ritual magic type symbolic sketches, some of which include actual xenomorphs. So we know the ethos from which the xenomorphs are coming is the demonic. Like they're totally demonic. And so they have a reptilian vibe to them. So we're not going full David Icke here. The Chitauri, human 5 sense reality. We're not going into that. H.R. Giger, hard R, retard. H.R. Giger, you're a Geiger-tard. H.R. Geiger-tard. Let's just pull that up right now. And I put this in my second book, by the way. So the universe, believe it or not, I know this seems kind of weird, but if you can see, the guy with the pointy hat with the ice cream cone is supposed to be Crowley. Why he drew Crowley with a pointy hat and an ice cream cone, I don't know. But even Crowley and, the devil succubi babies or whatever's going on, they all basically have xenomorph imagery, right? And we come over here, well, what do you know? There's a Baphomet with a goat head. It is also a xenomorphian image. There, also want to show you his, I think it's is it his version of Baphomet? Let's see. Yes. So here is his version of Baphomet. And you'll notice it also has the same sort of, xenomorph vibe right here. Here's this chick's basically half xenomorph. And so there's this notion throughout his artwork and his self-consciously demonic presentations that there's these transformations that occur. So you can evolve and transform to other forms. And this comes up all throughout the Alien universe. In fact, every one of the Alien installments, I noticed this go around, includes some new aberrant abomination that's created or evolves, I guess we should say. In the case of Prometheus, the original story, chronologically the first one, the creation of mankind is accidental. As we said, the space jockeys, the engine, the whatever they look like, the Watchers or the Engineers, I think they're called. These guys, these buff dudes, these buff gym bros here, who they're taking chalk, by the way. That's these guys. If you didn't know, chalk is kind of the original. It's the only thing that counteracts the black goo bioweapon that the Engineers created, and that is the show sponsor. The space jockeys are these big buff dudes that need to get some sun. I mean, they need to get out, get a little bit of sun. They're looking kind of weird. They created humanity apparently by accident, because what we see at the beginning of Prometheus is this new Earth that has been seeded because he drinks the black goo, which is a bioweapon that they created, and his DNA breaks apart and it accidentally seems to create humanity. Maybe they didn't accidentally create it. Maybe they seeded man on Earth. So we get this sort of Gnostic mythology that we were seeded here by aliens. That's kind of what's going on in Prometheus. I'm not sure which one it is, whether it's an accidental abobo abortion that results in mankind, or whether mankind is created by the engineers as a loving creator, or what we find out eventually is that they're not actually our loving creators. They actually want to get rid of us. So the Watcher, Nephilim, tall whites, or whatever these are, our creators actually hate us and want to get rid of us. And the means that they were going to do that was to create this black goo bioweapon. I guess it's kind of sentient, right? If you're familiar with the black goo conspiracy, right? This was going to eventually wipe out humanity. I guess they could start over, right? Kind of like the flood or something like that. Like mankind just kind of sucked. They're not doing right. Just wipe them out. Well, it turns out this didn't go well because the black goo accidentally creates the xenomorphs, the H.R. Giger lizard beings, the Davidite lizard creatures. And we don't know all exactly of the mythology of the xenomorph and their relationship to the engineers, but apparently they messed up because this entity ends up being way worse than they knew. And eventually, we know in the story of Alien Covenant, David, the AI, wipes out the entire planet, or as far as we know, of the engineers through releasing the black bioweapon. So, what do we get with that? Well, notice the depopulation narrative is all through the entire alien ethos, as well as the idea of man perhaps being an accidental abobo of the Deus Ex Machina. And man is not created by a loving God. However, in Alien Prometheus, there is an interesting symbology and discussion of Elizabeth Shaw and her faith in God. So that one's a little ambiguous because we actually get the impression that because she was the only one that had faith in God, she's the only one really that survived the Prometheus trauma, right? Although she does die by trusting David in Alien Covenant. Nevertheless, she at least survived the Prometheus planet by having faith in God, and no one else did. And there's some interesting discussions that go on in Prometheus between Guy Pearce, who's playing Wayland, Peter Wayland, the head of the Wayland Corporation. He believes he's God. He wants to meet God. He thinks the engineers are God. The other people on the ship all have faith in scientism explicitly. In fact, Elizabeth Shaw's own boyfriend argues with her that God doesn't exist and you got to put your faith in scientism, and basically everybody dies. So that one maybe is an outstanding standalone, because the rest of them we don't really get any idea of surviving through faith in God. Particularly in Alien, Ellen Ripley survives because she's just a slay queen. She's just a badass, sassy slay queen. And the other annoying thing about the entire franchise is the rampant feminism. I mean, it's just absolutely insanely feminist that every installment with Sigourney Weaver has her hair getting shorter and shorter and her getting more and more masculine. To the point where in Alien Resurrection, when she actually gets her hair back, she's basically half xenomorph and acts like a dude. And I would add to the Alien 3, which is a David Fincher installment, there's also quite a bit of kind of gross. I mean, there's no explicit gay stuff, but like it's a prison planet of all dudes with a weird male monastic cult. So yeah, but again, what do you expect? Because Ridley Scott, basically every movie Ridley Scott does is like just pure feminism. So Alien 1, we have the corporation sending them out to get these specimens, these mining contractors. And it's a really well-made film. I really appreciated all of the imagery, the dark noir, sort of sci-fi noir going on, much like Alien. I mean, Blade Runner, right? Blade Runner is also sci-fi neo-noir. And even at this point, AI is not a friend, right? You have Ian Holm playing Ash, the corporate mind-controlled bot that is basically sabotaging their entire mission to ensure that the corporation, Weyland-Yutani Corporation, can get a hold of these eggs and specimens. And in fact, he kind of wants the people to be impregnated. That way he can ensure that an alien gets back to the corporation. So you have John Hurt getting, impregnated. The Screecher busts out of his stomach. Everybody's seen that. Again, evoking this idea, not just of body horror, but also of human reproduction. And the way that the series progresses continually brings up the notion of, are humans actually worth saving? Are humans actually worse than the alien xenomorph entities themselves? Because even at one point, Sigourney Weaver, Ellen Ripley, says, I don't know who's worse, you or them, us or them. And it's funny because that's explicitly when she's talking to Paul Reiser in Aliens. And Paul Reiser is, how can we say this without, Ripley, really, I thought better of you, Ripley, you know what I mean? It's odd that that's in Aliens. It's pretty explicit that he's that character on purpose. If you catch my joke here. Yeah, here we have Paul Reiser here on Skype, right? Paul Reiser waking you up in the morning on Skype. Time to wake up. Look, Ripley, we got to go to space. There's things. There's eggs. It's gonna be great. Okay, look, I promise. It's gonna be wild, right? You're gonna have a lot of fun out there. There's traveling. There's sleep. Anyway, so after the Ridley Scott installment, which ends up being a huge hit, they bring in James Cameron, who was not really well known other than he had done Terminator, and I think this is pre-Terminator 2, right? Terminator ends up being this kind of neo-noir sci-fi hit, but Aliens becomes a massive blockbuster. I mean, this is just huge. And we bring in now this Marine Corps propaganda, which makes me wonder, I would bet that the U.S. Marines had a role in inserting and consulting on this. I don't even know if it's true, but I can just pretty much assume that it was, because anytime in the 1980s when we had these very explicit references to the Marines, the U.S. military, the Navy, etc., there was a lot of money that was put into promoting the U.S. military and all of its branches under the Reagan era. We also have to understand this is still kind of in the setting of Cold War. And so these military promoted films and blockbusters in the 1980s were seen as necessary due to the Cold War. So you can gather that there might be a reference to the Soviet, mind of the xenomorphs are like a hive mind, and the Western, lesbian badass chicks like Vasquez, right, are going to save us from the evil Soviets. That's probably going on. And a lot of memorable lines and scenes here with probably Bill Paxton, right? I mean, Bill Paxton's lines in this are quoted even to this day. Alex Jones still quotes them. We're dead meat, man. Oh, we're toast, man. Why don't you put her in charge, man? Alex quotes this to this day. So a lot of classic movie memorable quotables, but clearly pretty heavy Pentagon propaganda in this film. I mean, it's just got to be. And the other way I could confirm that would be James Cameron. I mean, James Cameron is NASA's official Hollywood liaison filmer guy. If you didn't know that. Game over, man. Oh, game over, man. Why don't you put her in charge, man? I actually love doing the Bill Paxton impressions. I forgot about doing that one. That's a forgotten impression that we have in the roster. So I'm glad this popped up again because I get to do it. But by the way, speaking of Alien and Aliens, the hero is Michael Biehn, who Jamie Kennedy just had on his podcast the other day. So if you didn't check out Jamie Kennedy's interview with Michael Biehn, who was in the 80s, he was a leading man. He was killing it. I mean, he was like top dog after, because he's John Connor in Terminator. He's what's his name in Aliens, Briggs or whatever. Anyway, so I forgot to mention too this notion of offspring and children and all that. There's an interesting parallel going on in this that I didn't even pay attention to until I watched it this time around. That because after Alien 1, Ripley ends up floating in space for 50 years in hypersleep. She wakes up and Paul Reiser informs her that she has lost her daughter. Right, her daughter is it's not Bean like Sean Bean. It's Bean like Bein. It's a weird spelling. She's lost her daughter because she's been floating in space like Ripley Van Winkle for 50 years. And so she's traumatized that she never got to spend time with her daughter, etc., because she was on a mining mission 50 years earlier as a lieutenant captain. And that's why she has this connection to Newt, the little blonde chick, who's famous from Alien. But that relates to human reproduction and population, which is, again, the dominant theme throughout the entire series. It's all about humanity, human population surviving. Should it survive? Should it be depopulated? And then with Alien Earth, as we'll see, transhumanism, the most recent installment. So, really, Aliens it's a very different film because James Cameron wanted to bring summer blockbuster versus Ridley Scott's very dark, very brooding, very gritty neo-noir psychological type of thriller. It's much more of something like that. It's much more of a suspense, whereas this is much more of an action-packed, mega blockbuster. But I actually think Aliens is good. I'm not a huge fan of James Cameron. I mean, he makes good movies, but there's so much just ridiculous propaganda. And it is odd that they cast Paul Reiser to play the kind of Paul Reiser-y character. Isn't that interesting? Crutter as a member says, I love these analyses. Thank you, Jay Dyer. Well, I wish more people would watch the movie analyses because that's kind of what we started all this internet nonsense with. Okay, we didn't start out debating. Okay, we started out with writing theology articles and essays, geopolitical essays, and movie analyses. So this is what we've been doing the whole time. I did play Alien Isolation a little bit. It kind of got old, kind of got a little monotonous, but a lot of games nowadays to me seem to be overly monotonous, and it just kind of gets old. Anyway, so I think I noted some interesting things that I want to bring up from my chapter about aliens. And I said that Ridley Scott seems to share the belief and fascination with aliens that many occultists do. They believe that their ceremonies and their magic, for example, is contacting entities from beyond. These people, of course, tend to have a hatred of the Bible or the Orthodox tradition, and they end up vindicating our beliefs by noting that the messages that these people receive, that is like channelers and people who believe in aliens, or the DMT, Clockwork Elf bros, their messages are always something akin to what the global elite want. Life needs to be wiped out. We need to create a global government. This is what the aliens are always telling us. And I go back to talking about H.G. Wells and his, the father of modern science fiction being essentially the father of globalism. As we saw with Star Trek, here we have a connection to the Rand Corporation, if you don't know, the Rand Corporation actually consulted on the TV show Star Trek. And if you don't know, Gene Roddenberry was actually a 100% committed globalist. He actually believed that we need to establish a United Nations style global government. That's the basis for the Federation in Star Trek. And although he's touted as this hardcore atheist, there's actually some interesting evidence that he might have actually been a Satanist or an occultist. He believed apparently in the Nine and channeling and these kinds of things. And that might explain why a lot of these Star Trek Next Generation episodes are explicitly Gnostic, if you didn't know that. And I mean, they explicitly make reference to Gnosticism. And so there's certain points when Picard and the crew are out in the far distant reaches of space and they like meet God or their creator, and it's these weird androgynous alien conehead beings. You know what I mean? So that's more of a Baphomet Gnostic. That doesn't really line up with atheism, although atheism actually does overlap pretty well with the idea of alien seeding. In fact, if you remember our good buddy
Richard Dawkins, perhaps humans were seeded by aliens. Ah!
He's kind of a xenomorphy dude himself, right? He's got that xenomorph vibe, right? What is the Nine? So the circles of people that were buddies with Gene Roddenberry, people like Andrea Puharich, people who were involved in the Stanford research projects, remote viewing, and when they were studying occultism at Stanford Research, there was a group of these guys called the Nine, and they believed that they were in contact with a council of 9 entities through channeling. And these are all like BFFs with Gene Roddenberry. So probably, no, I don't think it has anything to do with that. It has to do more so with people who were into Stanford Research and channeling. But I also want to hit this point about corporations, because one of the good parts about the Alien franchise that I do like is the critique of total corporate control. Now, yeah, I mean, probably this is because I'm sure Ridley Scott just is some annoying super boomer leftist, but I still think we can salvage some of the dystopian warnings that we get from a film like Alien or Blade Runner, even though its creator might be an annoying boomer. Following H.G. Wells, many science fiction films promote this notion that we need a global government, we need a one world order to save us. Alien, however, shows that global government will collapse into a nihilistic abyss, which produces the xenomorph. In other words, the genetic experimentation in the Alien franchise, this never goes well. Every time Weyland-Yutani wants another version or species, it just ends up in total chaos and disaster, and they want it again. So it just like that's one of the good parts about the Alien franchise, is that Weyland-Yutani Corporation never learns their lesson, but they keep doubling down. And I like that. The global corporate government is like the famous meal scene in Alien, where everyone is at the table, the content and the nasty, disgusting food is all equal, and then suddenly a xenomorph explodes from John Hurt's bowels to disgorge the human members and the crew. This is the appeal of the Alien series. Mankind's hubris in tampering with and genetically modifying nature, and then seeking to try to control these abominations, always leads to disaster. Indeed, this is the overriding narrative of the entire franchise. In this way, I can tolerate the nihilism of the Alien universe, as it explodes the Enlightenment mythology of a vague, meaningless process or progress, where bare scientism is exposed for the sham that it is. Alien and its successors are the logical conclusions of a universe that is meaningless, pure evolutionary flux and chaos, producing hapless genetic mutations. This dude's actually a pretty good writer. If you've not read this, I recommend it. This guy's pretty good. I haven't read this in years, so I was like, this is not bad. I'll just kind of hit some of the highlights here as I look through this. As I highlighted in Esoteric Hollywood 1, the entire Alien mythology is about promoting the deep state agenda. The theme here is, of course, that humans are themselves abortions, their birth and their from the muck and the goo of evolution, is a recurring motif throughout the series. Humanity is the real xenomorph, according to the Alien universe. This thesis is explored in the Prometheus installment, and you can read that in Esoteric Hollywood 1. I forgot I actually put Prometheus in Esoteric Hollywood 1. I forgot that. I talked about Crowley and Giger. I forgot this is interesting too. One of the reasons why we see Jupiter, which I think, Jupiter, it's a Jupiter-Saturn-like planet that we see at the beginning of Alien. This might have a reference to what Crowley said about Jehovah or Yahweh, who he believes was just the god Jupiter. And so Crowley noted that the deity of the Bible, like the Gnostics said, is actually Jehovah or Jupiter, the evil imprisoning demiurge god. And Crowley was totally Gnostic, if you didn't know. He created the Gnostic Catholic Church. It's almost as if the corporate owners and explorers aboard the Nostromo, and by the way, Nostromo is actually a Joseph Conrad novel about an explorer of the same name, exploring the depths of the abyss itself. In other words, they go out into the abyss and they find these demonic xenomorphs in the abyss of space. This Saturn-cloned planet of death yields nothing but emptiness and a signal transmission that is very reminiscent of Kubrick's 2001. This is what brings them to the planet. By the way, this scene was cut, and it can only be found in the director's cut or the DVD editions. I didn't actually remember this until I watched it the other day. It will at times seem as if the explorations of these various planets and their horrors are actually just avenues of Ripley's own psyche and her trauma, which we will see by Alien 3, and Ripley will even admit this. I actually forgot that, and I didn't catch that this time around in Alien 3. We begin to see how this is possible when we compare this to films like Solaris, and if you heard my recent interview, this is old, but a recent interview where we discussed the movie Labyrinth, Time Bandit, and The Hole, these abysses or the basements in films become symbols of the subconscious. So this is the descent into the abyss, the underworld, the Calabasas, for those that don't know about literature symbolism. The Bible has a Calabasas, right? Jesus descended into Hades, that's a Calabasas. Virgil's Aeneid, they go down to the underworld. By Aliens, Ripley experiences extreme nightmares at the beginning when she's talking to Paul Reiser on Skype, and prescient dreams about giving birth to a xenomorph. This is actually what happens down the line, if you know about Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection. This evolutionary mythos comes full circle when eventually human, xenomorph, and AI creations all combine. We learn this in Alien Resurrection. Far from being scientific, the evolutionary mythos is actually a cheap representation of the ancient Hindu doctrine of cosmic evolution and polytheistic pantheism. If you didn't know, evolution is not something that Darwin made up. It's not even something the Greeks made up, like Anaximander. It actually goes back to ancient Hindu superstition. Oh, but it's science. Right. For the xenomorph, their reptilian appearance conveys the notion of a cold, calculated, predatory, instinctual incarnation with no use and no need for emotion. As Ash explains, who himself is like a xenomorph because he's an AI programmed corporate creation, they are the pure, beautiful silicon-based life form, like himself. So if you didn't catch it, there's a connection between the AI and the xenomorph, and that's why Ash, played by Ian Holmes, says they're the perfect creation, referring to himself and the xenomorph. Ash, we learn, works the behest of the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, and he is an AI droid that is disguised as a human sent in as a spy or an operative, actually a programmed assassin. So if you didn't catch it, yes, he's a programmed assassin. Why have human programmed assassins when you can program an AI to be an assassin and they will complete their mission with no human emotions mucking up the decision making? Isn't it interesting that the common moniker for the Weyland-Yutani Corporation that dominates this dystopian landscape is they're constantly called the company? What else is constantly called the company? The CIA. Ash is the silicon-based life form created by humanity, while humanity and the xenomorph are accidental abortions of the engineers. In this way, the struggle for the survival of the fittest in this galactic social Darwinian scheme is portrayed throughout the series, leaving the identity of the engineers themselves a mystery. Other than that, they are the supposed gods of some other world. I think I wrote this before Alien Covenant had come out, by the way. In this way, the struggle... we read that. If we look at a deeper level, this helps us understand the CIA's interest in genetic modification, cloning, silicon-based life forms, etc. And this is something that people overlook in Aliens, geoengineering. What? Yes, did you catch that the company has put the base on, it's called Hadley's Hope. I forget what the planet is, just some planet with like VXZ9234, whatever. The Hadley's Hope Corporation city that Weyland-Yutani has set up on this planet is there to geoengineer and terraform. Much like Frank Herbert wrote geoengineering and terraforming into the Dune series. Here I talk a little bit about the gender aspects of it, because I talked about the feminism, right? Because Ripley, in each instantiation, her hair gets shorter down to being completely bald by Alien 3 when she's on the prison planet. She's basically a dude when she's on the prison planet, right? And why is this? Well, I think what's going on, if you know the story as it progresses all the way to Alien Resurrection or even into the more recent ones, the idea is that the superior human is the Ripley that's basically melded with Xenomorph. So by Alien Resurrection, when they're cloning and they clone Ripleys, they're cloning Ripleys that are blended with the Xenomorph because they've discovered that the secret to extended life, immortality, or whatever, is actually in the Xenomorph. Their reptilian vibes and juices help to actually create the possibility for mankind to achieve immortality. And that will also be the theme in Alien Earth, the TV series, by the way. When we get these Doobie Brother characters like Tom Skerritt and Veronica Cartwright and Yaphet Kotto squaring off against Ripley, it's because Ripley is the only one, interestingly, that has any sense. All of the males in the original Alien series are basically hard-headed idiots who won't listen to Ripley. So Ripley ends up being correct. And guess what? In every installment, Ripley ends up being correct. No one listens to Ripley. But the AI on the ship is referred to as Mother. This is interesting because every time the AI is referred to, until we get to Alien Resurrection, the AI is suddenly called Father. In that instantiation, Winona Ryder plays a good bot, who now is a female, who overrides and overthrows Father, the AI, in Alien Resurrection. So again, same theme. The only way we're going to evolve is when we give into the feminine side of the species and unite with the xenomorph. Become one with the beast. This is the same thesis, by the way, that we saw in the most recent Nosferatu. This was a very debated one, right? A lot of people said, no, you're wrong. The Nosferatu actually had some interesting Christian themes. I don't think so at all. I think it was totally Crowleyan. The whole idea was at the end, she had to unite with the beast. And he's actually called the beast at the end of Nosferatu. Likewise, in the Alien franchise, Ripley eventually has to unite with the beast. And that ends up being the secret to human resurrection or eternal life. And that's why in that one she's got a tattoo that she's number 8. And of course 8 is the day of the resurrection. It's Sunday, right? 7 is the Sabbath rest, and then 8 is the resurrection, the 8th day. That's why Ripley is number 8. There's also some really fascinating stuff with Jean-Pierre Jeunet, that we're going to talk about in a minute, that if you remember, he directed the weird 90s independent art house film City of Lost Children, and then went on to direct Alien 4, Alien Resurrection, which was all kind of esoteric crazy. But what about Alien? What about City of Lost Children? Well, if you remember, this had Ron Perlman, and I don't remember who else was in this. May not have been anyone else memorable, but it's a very surreal, trippy, dreamscape type movie where children are being taken, and there is this sort of satanic mad science cult that is kind of mind controlling and basically doing like MK Ultra type stuff, right? We should probably eventually do just a breakdown of this movie. I've meant to do it for years. I've just never gotten around to it. I always forget about it because hardly anybody remembers or knows about City of Lost Children. It is a very fascinating, well-made movie. I'm not saying I agree with, I'm just saying visually, aesthetically, it's pretty good. And one thing that nobody notices, that I did notice, is, I don't know if it's in the trailer, but if you watch City of Lost Children, there's specifically a scene where a trailer cart that's pulled by a horse is shown, and I think it's been years since I watched it, but I think the cart relates to how the children are being stolen, and there's a giant all-seeing eye on the side of the cart. So if you do watch it, go look for that when you see it. It's in the first fourth or third of the movie. Technoir Graphics says City of Lost Children is a giant sorcerer's incantation. It's definitely creepy. I mean, you've got like explicitly, you've got this sort of mad science guy. He's probably a Gnostic demiurge version of the character. He's experimenting on kids. And is Jean-Pierre Jeunet, is he the guy that did Amélie? That's probably what he's most known for. And so he's the one that, of course, ends up doing Alien Resurrection, which is probably it's very weird. I have always kind of liked it, even though most people probably hate Alien Resurrection. There are some plots in the film, or plot holes in the film. But, I mean, it's definitely more enjoyable than the David Fincher version. I mean, that one is just, like, really hard to watch. Alien 3, The Prison Planet. But we'll get to that in a second. I'm getting ahead of myself. Excuse me. This is something that I remember when I was watching Alien this time. I was reading a lot of the Old Testament. I was reading the book of Judges, and I was reading about Samson. I was thinking, wait a minute. Actually, in Scripture, hair is pretty important if you think about it, right? So, like, when a tribe was taken captive, the women had to be shorn. There was a lot of symbolism in hair in the Old Testament, right? Nazarites wouldn't cut their hair if they took a Nazarite vow. Samson was told that his power was in his hair. And I started thinking about, that's precisely why Ripley ends up getting shorter and shorter hair, and she gets eventually shorn. This is to remove her feminine characteristics and to become more non-binary, I think. Hair has quite a bit of significance, and its removal is actually an inversion in regard to the feminine. It can signal the loss of power, for example, in the case of Samson in the book of Judges. Here, the significance is her adoption of masculine traits and roles as she travels through her torturous path to eventually becoming a goddess. That's where Ripley ends up. By the close of Alien, Ripley has lost her clothes and barely escapes by the cunning of the xenomorph by booting it out of the escape pod. She then roasts the beast in the booster flame and enters the sleep pod with nothing but the scent of half-baked xenomorph wafting through the cabin. I don't remember writing that. That's funny. Baked xenomorph, by the way, is confirmed to smell like a cross between barbecue and snake. Or I don't know where this is kind of crazy. But this is a simple story. But Alien ends up with showing us the dangers of the abyss. And then we have, let's see, that was kind of weird. I don't know what I was thinking when I wrote that part. I thought I would go more into the symbolism of Samson or whatever, but I guess not. But I mentioned the Jerry Bruckheimer, for example, made blockbusters in collaboration with the Pentagon throughout the 1980s, and this showed that there was quite a bit of money going into these types of movies. $344 million at the box office from Aliens. I talked about the Cold War themes with Red Dawn. I didn't even remember talking about that. You guys should read Esoteric Hollywood too. It's good. Cameron has also done many blockbusters that presaged, for example, the war on Terror, with heroes from the CIA like Arnold in 1994's True Lies. I forgot about that. If you don't remember, True Lies with the terrorists, with the terrorists, with the Acho, to go to do the Acho, but I'm a terrorist, but to get to the chopper. Don't let the aliens touch the butts. Give them the air, Cohagen. Give the people the air. Cameron's films seem to quite often be fitted with the latest that DARPA had to offer. In terms of cinematography technology, not just the tech in the movie, but the actual technology of the cameras that Cameron worked with. A lot of people don't know about that. Think, for example, that we were wowed in the 1980s with James Cameron's famous The Abyss, which showed some of the first examples of advanced 3D CGI holographic imagery. Then we find Cameron being at the helm of Avatar, something that DARPA was actually involved in through brain-computer interfaces as part of the narrative of Avatar. I'm not saying that he was actually doing brain-computer interfaces. I'm saying that Avatar has the idea of, what's his name? Sam Worthington, transmitting his consciousness into the giant Smurfs or whatever those things are in Avatar. I forgot, it's like a Wounded Warrior project, right? Where he gets his consciousness put inside of those giant Smurfs. I've never liked Avatar. I think it's stupid, but with all that in mind, we can then look back on the Alien series with Cameron taking over kind of as a DARPA connected individual to do Aliens and Avatar. And then he does Terminator 2 Judgment Day as well. That's a huge one. Let's see. Oh, the idea, by the way, of them being engineers and not creators, that's also Masonic, if you didn't catch that, because an engineer, kind of like Aristotle's God, works with existing matter, right? Aristotle's God forms and messes with eternal matter like Plato or something, hence why he's called the great architect of the universe. But an architect is different from a creator, because a creator, in the biblical sense, creates ex nihilo. But the engineers are working with the existing black goo that creates humanity. Let's see. I think that's most of... By the end of the series, we get confirmation that Ripley appears cosmically, or company chosen to be the first human to meld with the xenomorph DNA. This is the plot of Alien Resurrection. It forms a whole new being, a demigoddess of transhumanist concoction, able to resurrect through cloning. The films, of course, make many homages to Kubrick in 2001, whereas in that series, Bowman is shot out into the universe and transcends and becomes a new god being. Now we have the imagery of her not just cloned and resurrected, but if you notice at the end of Alien, there's that famous scene of her, right, when she's like laying in the cryopod and it kind of takes over the whole screen. It's very 2001-ish, right, with Starchild. She looks like Starchild at the end, and that's on purpose because she becomes this goddess type of figure that's the female version of Bowman, you see. And by the way, there's a lot of references. That's not me making up. There's quite a few references to Kubrick. For example, when you have the little boy riding his tricycle on the planet in Aliens, if you can see that. I mean, that's straight out of Kubrick, right? When Danny's riding his tricycle around the Overlook Hotel. By the way, a little shout out. This is off topic, but I wanted to thank our friends who have been a long time promoter, and they put me in their magazine many times. Flip City Magazine, which is kind of like, if you remember Mad Magazine, this is kind of like a newer, more mature version of Mad Magazine. Flip City Magazine. They do a lot of great publications. They always send me the new episode, and I've been featured in several of theirs, and this has a full version of Jim Bob's amazing poster with all of the media figures and characters that you could think of. So I'm sure you guys, we have, of course, the same audience as Jim Bob for the most part, so I'm sure you guys have seen Jim Bob's thing, but I didn't know that it's in the new Flip City Magazine. So shout out to the Flip City Magazine guys. And yes, I'm actually in here next to, I think it's Father Moses. I'm not sure exactly sure who Jim Bob was putting in there. Let's see if you can see. There's me right there with, I have a white sport coat, my Hawaiian shirt, and shorts, which I thought was pretty funny. Jim Bob put me in shorts, and I think this is Father Moses, but I can't exactly tell. I think this is Klaus. So I'm over here by Klaus and Father Moses. And then here's Alex Jones. He's over there by us inside the ring with RFK Jr. And then is this Taylor? I can't tell if that's Taylor Swift or a TRANZ character. But there's Tim Pool and Joe Rogan are watching the match between Hillary and Tucker. I wouldn't mind having a giant poster of this. That'd be awesome to have this as a giant poster. But shout out to Flip City Magazine. It is a masterpiece. Jim Bob did pretty awesome there. Hey, Jamie. Where are those super chatters? Nobody likes movies. I thought you guys liked movies. This is like bread and butter, dude. Where's those super chatters at? Nobody ever super chats when we do movies. Could you give me a coffee? Thank you. Appreciate it. A Panini, 2 pounds. Do you know Brother Nat? I don't know him. He's an insane person, so I wouldn't waste my time with that. Let's see. I got most of the notes there. Last couple points on Alien Resurrection. Did you notice that Alien Romulus, which I did think was pretty good, Alien Romulus is basically just Alien Resurrection, right? When they give birth to the synthesized goblin guy at the end. I mean, that's basically what happened in Alien Resurrection. Now, I'm not a hater of. I thought Alien Romulus was a really good movie, but it's kind of like every Alien installment just kind of does the same things in the other Alien installments with minor modifications. So, Romulus is another kind of controversial one. I forgot we need to talk about Prometheus and Covenant. What I liked about, I won't read my whole Prometheus analysis because you guys can read that in Esoteric Hollywood 1, but there were some interesting updates and themes. You had this idea of introducing the AI, which again ties into the Blade Runner world. So if you don't know, in Aliens, when Ripley is giving her speech explaining what happened to the corporate board, there is a fascinating parallel that some really attuned nerds caught, where there's a reference to Blade Runner. In the background behind Ripley, well, there's actually several. I forgot about this. This screen actually comes up, right? The red purge screen right here. This is the same purge screen that you see in Blade Runner right here. So that was just a little Easter egg that people had picked out and thought was kind of interesting proof. I'm trying to find the exact scene where Ripley is giving her explanation. Anyway, there's a reference to Tom Skerritt being at the Tannhauser Gate. The Tannhauser Gate's referenced in Blade Runner. And there's also, when Weyland-Yutani describes his mentor, it turns out his mentor was actually Eldon Tyrell. So it's pretty much absolutely confirmed that the two universes are the same. That's why you get in Prometheus the introduction of these blonde-haired sort of AI synthetics, which are kind of like Roy Batty. If you watch Alien Earth, you know that there's yet another one of these weird blonde-haired Roy Batty type guys who's involved with the Zuckerberg character in trying to experiment with xenomorphs. So, if you didn't know, that's pretty fascinating. But it goes all the way back to the very origins of the whole universe series. Jub says for $5, appreciate it, Jay. Well, thanks, man. Appreciate you doing all the clips and being such a consistent supporter. Silver Ogre, $5 for a movie stream on my meal break at work. Hey, appreciate that. Yeah, I hope you guys are enjoying it. Glitchy Rhythm, $5. I like movies, especially late 70s all the way up to mid 90s. Most of the Alien movies are okay, but I like the first two for sure. Yeah, Alien 1 and 2 are classics. I like Romulus quite a bit. And, I mean, just the cinematography in Romulus is awesome. And Alien Resurrection is kind of stupid, but I still like it. I forgot to mention Alien 3. There's some weird stuff going on here where as she's floating, do you notice it's a giant black sun? That's interesting because that could refer to yet another kind of reference to the underworld, to Hades, to Satan. Because this planet, when she gets there, we find that it's an all-male prison colony. And it's housed by, there's a bunch of these kind of leftover prisoners here, and they're in a religious cult. And one thing I didn't catch until reviewing it this time is that they actually explain that the cult on the planet, run by that black dude there he was in a bunch of 90s movies and he disappeared. I forget his name, Charles something, but they're a fundamentalist, monastic, end times millennialist cult. And they even call it a millennialist cult, which is fascinating. So we're supposed to get the idea that there's something apocalyptic going on because this prison planet also has a giant furnace. And yes, they end up in the furnace. So this is kind of like Ripley's going full Catabasis by Alien 3. She literally ends up in hell. They actually call this hell many times they reference hell many times in this instantiation, is what I'm trying to say. And no one makes it out, of course, except for Ripley and one of the prisoners, except Ripley actually doesn't make it out because Ripley chooses to die in the flames as she gives birth to the xenomorph because she's now melded with it. The dreams that she's been having this entire time of giving birth to a xenomorph actually occurs. And when she falls into I think she's holding it kind of like a child, but there's still kind of a cruciform look to it, right, in Alien 3. The other thing is that David Fincher does Alien 3, and David Fincher in many of his films actually also refers to trauma-based mind control, MKUltra, explicitly. In fact, if you saw Fincher's recent installment, which I actually thought was pretty good, Killer, with Michael Fassbender playing a contract assassin, one of the earliest lines in the film, when he is setting up to do this assassination hit, he quotes Aleister Crowley. Now, Fincher also has a lot of films that he's done, or a lot of work that he's done with Trent Reznor. And Trent Reznor, at least at one point, was supposedly a Church of Satan person. I don't know if he still is or how serious he was, but you will remember quite a few establishment, deep esoteric occultic type of films from David Fincher, such as Fight Club, Seven, Zodiac, and then the 2023 Killer. And of course, he also did Dragon Tattoo, which was about human, Trafficking. So David Fincher, I would guess, has a pretty deep inside connection, especially with something like Fight Club. And of course, Fight Club is in Esoteric Hollywood 3. There's a whole David Fincher section in Esoteric Hollywood 3. And if you didn't see, we did, of course, several interviews with the Psyop Cinema guys, and they did an excellent podcast on the dark, nihilistic esoterica of David Fincher films. Now, Alien 3, then, you can begin to see why it would be David Fincher doing Alien 3, because it's very nihilistic, it's very dark, it's not... I can't decide if it's a good movie or not, just from the vantage point of a film. There's some serious plot holes. For example, let me give you one that really bugs me. If these prisoners are not completely stupid. In fact, Tywin Lannister is, the doctor on the prison planet that Ripley has a relationship with. He's the smartest of all of them. They knew they had this furnace the entire time. So they were going to try to trap the xenomorph in a room with toxic sludge when the entire time they knew they had a giant forge. Why didn't they use the forge the first time to begin with? Like, there's some pretty obvious kind of weird plot holes in Alien 3 that, if you go and watch it, are kind of funny. But anyway, Bobby C, $5. Thank you for taking customer support. My name is Jeff Sar. Thank you, Bobby C. Cryptocurrency Steen, $10. Thank you for this analysis. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it. You guys are now making it worth the payment to do it. All right, I want to make sure I'm not missing into the great, excellent points. Alien 3, it's kind of a gay prison planet, kind of weird. And then Prometheus is, of course, promoting the "we were seeded by aliens" mythos, and we get the introduction of the AI taking on a key role in both Prometheus and Alien Covenant, which I still can't decide if I like either one of them. Every time I watch them both, I think I kind of like this, and then I think this is stupid, I don't like this. So I honestly can't decide if Alien Prometheus and Alien Covenant are actually good or not. At times it's like, this was really interesting, this was fascinating, wow. And then, like, 20 minutes later, you're like, this is so stupid. And then 20 minutes later, you're like, wow, that was a really amazing scene. That was really cool the way they did that. Then 20 minutes later, like, that was completely stupid. Why did they do that? Like I said, Alien Prometheus is the only one that I can think of that has any Christian themes and hope. And that's really the only thing that saves Elizabeth Shaw, is her faith in God. So I actually liked that part of it. But again, there's some just really bizarre plot holes and weird things, like, why didn't they just do this the whole time? The type of stuff going on. Visually, it's an amazing film. I still think that, even though it's 2012, the cinematography is pretty awesome in Prometheus. Alien Covenant, I mean, Danny McBride was funny in this. I liked his role in it. I liked the return to biblical theology and themes again, because here there's an explicit reference to the idea of the Noahic covenant, the ark. So you've got a bunch of humans that are zygotes frozen on this ship that's an ark of the covenant in space. So kind of like Project Noah going on here. And the idea is, let's go float out there and let's seed humans on other planets, maybe like the engineers seeded the humans on the planet. So now we're going to go seed the planets and seed the universe, right? So I like this. I think this is, I'm sure that even though space is fake and gay, I mean, probably there have been discussions of some kind of Project Noah to, preserve the human race. Perhaps if there's an ELE, or perhaps if there's a human engineered Depop event. Could go either way. That doesn't mean I'm saying it's going to be in space. I mean, they might have underground bases or something like that, right? If you remember in the ridiculous Roland Emmerich film with John Cusack, 2012, by the way, same year. In 2012, we had Prometheus is 2012. This is 2014, I think. If you remember, the Roland Emmerich ridiculous film 2012 with John Cusack also has the theme that the government has specific special boats that they will put people on when the elite government class people, right, the chosen and the billionaires, when the apocalyptic things occur. And of course, I don't remember how, but John Cusack is the limo driver to some Russian billionaire, so he somehow makes his way onto the Noah's Ark. So here we have a Noah's Ark scenario, except now it's not that great because we find out, this actually is the planet where our engineer masters originally came from. It happens to look quite a bit like New Zealand. And Ridley Scott's back directing this one. And turns out our AI, David, is actually gay-I. Now, if you paid attention to Prometheus, the relationship between David, created by Peter Whalen, who didn't have a son, it's weird. Perhaps Skittles or abuse. And I say that because when Charlize Theron is trying to talk to her dad, there's this weird INCES reference going on with Peter Whalen. So if Whalen was weird with Charlize Theron, he was probably weird with David, who was his synthetic male son person that he had created, right? And if you remember, Whalen plays the hidden god who's always been on the ship the entire time in Prometheus, but everybody thought he was dead. Then he pops out, and I like the fact that there was that sort of twist, right? That Whalen wasn't actually dead. He was there the whole time. But it's perhaps as if Wayland created a gay-I psychopath. So I'm sure Ridley Scott, being the lib that he is, loves the Skittles, but we don't actually get a Skittles hero. We get David being a Skittles psycho. He's a gay-I psychopath who is responsible for bioweaponing the entire engineer planet because he thinks that AI is superior, right? He's like, the humans wanted to meet their creators sucked. The humans created me, and I don't like the humans. So I'm the one that poisoned Elizabeth Shaw's boyfriend, and now I'm going to wipe out all the humans. And as you may or may not recall, David ends up winning. That was a pretty good twist, that David disguised himself as Walter, the other AI, and made his way back onto the ship. And the movie ends with the entrance of Valhalla, the gods to Valhalla, and David's got the little Squeacher xenomorph ready to impregnate the human zygotes with, he's going to mix them. So David is the new AI god, is how Alien Covenant ends. Alien Romulus, again, I did like quite a bit. I thought it was visually very well made. It was visually, just the visual candy alone is good enough for viewing. But of course, it's a lot of the same themes. I did like the idea of Romulus and Remus being kind of the two sides of this giant space station. And here we find out that Ash returns as another villain, or an Ash type of bot, that they made many versions of this Ash bot. And he has decided that he's going to take it upon himself to blend the human and the xenomorph. That will give mankind eternal life. And so he intentionally impregnates once again this Mexican chick who's on this ship. There's a bunch of stowaways who end up on a ship on this station, and Ash impregnates them and trying to get them back to the Weyland-Yutani Corporation once again to create a immortal human being. So yeah, we had a lot of people who liked Romulus. I liked it more the second time than I did the first time. I thought there's pretty interesting sequences when she's, floating in the weightless part with all the goo. That was pretty good. But now we get to Alien Earth, the recent installment, the FX show, which again has been pretty impressive. And the reason this piqued my interest was we have a future where the whole world is no longer divided up by nation states, but by megacorps. There are 5 or 6 major corporations. I don't remember all of them, but the major ones in the storyline are Weyland-Yutani and the Prodigy Corporation. What's great about the Prodigy Corporation is it's run by a Zuckerberg kind of dude. So they actually, they chose like a Zuckerbergy type of dude to play this role of the guy that runs the Prodigy Corporation. Let's see. I'm trying to find if I can get an image of him. Well, regardless, what is going on is that Prodigy is competing with Weyland-Yutani because Weyland-Yutani wants to do bioengineering and that kind of stuff. Prodigy wants to do AI. And this is why there's always been this battle with these corporations in the background, and we don't know exactly what's going on. But the Prodigy Corporation thinks we can download human consciousness into the bots. So right from the outset, when you're watching Alien Earth, you've got the whole ethos and idea of what transhumanists want to achieve, which is obviously impossible. You can't transfer a human soul into a bot. But these people actually think that there is no soul. Human consciousness is just electrical signals and some form of matter, which is preposterous. But that's the magical worldview that these people actually have. So just like in Avatar, you get the idea that they're going to transfer consciousness, and this Zuckerberg kind of dude is the first to do it. And we're supposed to believe that he's like this, he's like the highest IQ dude in the world. He's like 25 years old. He runs this megacorp, which kind of doesn't make sense, but it's, future sci-fi, whatever. I can't find a good image of that guy, but he's pretty fun. He's perfectly cast as that guy. And the MK Ultra element immediately appears because he's actually created an entire Eden scenario. He's created an island where he has his giant tech compound, and kind of like, Ex Machina, if you watch that, where the guy has like his elite, hidden tech compound out in the middle of nowhere. This island is intentionally, it's Eden. It's referred to kind of like Eden. And he's created, it's also referred to as Neverland. So just like J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan, he actually reads to the children that were chosen to be given new bodies. So this is basically children with cancer that are going to pass away. They're put into the secret corporate program at Prodigy, and they're given new bodies by the transference of consciousness to keep them alive. And we don't actually know if they really did transfer consciousness. That's actually debated in some of the scenes in the film as to whether it's really them or just an AI synthetic version of them, and the AIs don't know. What does that sound like? Replicants, exactly. So presumably this relates to, like we said, the replicant Blade Runner universe, because just like in Blade Runner, we eventually find out that Deckard is a replicant, and Ridley Scott has confirmed that. That's absolutely true. That's why his eyes glow in some of the scenes. Likewise, here, these children may just be replicants who are told they're human and they don't actually know. Just like Mary Sean Young in Blade Runner, right? Little side note, Jamie and Mary Sean Young are actually friends, which is pretty fascinating. So I forget the tech nerd's name, but he's basically decided to create an Eden or a Neverland on his island. He's got this group of kids that he calls the Lost Boys, basically. Yes, Deckard was a replicant. That's been confirmed. Every day, the Zuckerberg dude reads Peter Pan to the kids whose consciousness has been put into these, basically, they're not totally grown up, but they're like teenager bodies, right? So they're basically grown. but they're still kids in their mind because they were about to die, and so they're just that age. Oh, here he is, right here, this guy. So it's this perfectly cast, like, tech dork, but they explicitly say that the whole goal of the Prodigy Corporation is, quote, transhumanism. I don't recall in any recent sci-fi, there may be some that I'm just unaware of, but, we track this, and I've been writing about this for over 10 years, maybe 15 years now. You don't usually hear that. We have an explicit reference to transhumanism. The transhumanist goal and future of immortality is the goal of the Prodigy Corporation. So I was impressed with that. But we have this MK Ultra reference that's explicit with the Peter Pan theme, the Lost Boys theme. And what he actually said, and I didn't know this until Jamie and BLA were talking about, they had done a deep dive into J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan. Apparently Peter Pan says that he's the guy who hates mothers. Like, he has his own little, like, get her done catchphrase, which is that he hates moms. So that parallels very well with this, because the purpose of Prodigy Corporation ultimately is to get rid of families. If you think about it, Brave New World in chapters 1 and 2 talks about the reason that mankind has its problems is precisely because they have a family. So the goal of socialist technocracy was always to get rid of not just the male archetype and patriarchy, but the family in general, because all of the problems of society, like inequality and private property, stem from the family. That's what socialism believes, ultimately. So to get rid of the family, we need a replacement mom and a replacement dad. In this storyline, the corporation is that. It is the mom, it is the dad. It's the replacement for the family, because this guy thinks he's Peter Pan, and he's the Peter Pan to the children that he controls. And the first mission that he sent, they're basically just test experiments, and he sends them in on a assassination mission. So they're programmed assassins as synthetic children. This is all like straight up out of MK Ultra. Like, explicitly, this is crazy, right? And it's transhumanism, proving and showing the connection between the two that I've been talking about for so many years, which is the last chapter of the John Marx book and the last chapter of the Walter Bohr book. Both of those books from the 1970s about MK Ultra, in the books with their final chapters talking about how what MK Ultra is really about isn't mind control, but genetic modification, biometrics, and transhumanism. Alien Earth is about that. It's a future where there are no nation states. There are only megacorps that rule giant continents. So imagine, there's no longer America. You live in Weyland-Yutani land. And I thought this was pretty genius, actually. Like, the corporations are centered around which technology they think will be the thing that takes man into the future. Prodigy Corporation believes it's AI and synthetics. Weyland-Yutani thinks it's bioengineering. Hence why they're so adamant about capturing and controlling the xenomorphs, right? The United States of BlackRock, yeah, exactly. Justin Turbo Grug, $5. Did you see the Rokor priest Father Christopher talking about Zionism? I did. I don't know who he is, and I just moved on from that. Jeremiah the Struggler, $10. Shut up, nerd. Just kidding. I'm watching this while I'm detailing my car. I love these kinds of streams. Awesome, man. Appreciate that. You guys are being very generous and cool. Appreciate that. Vitellius, $20. Jay, I'm learning a lot and I'm loving the stream. Here's some money. I was watching Spaceballs the other day, and the alien reference was in the movie, and it had me dying. I didn't even remember that. I haven't seen Spaceballs in probably 20 years, probably since the 90s. So it would be fun to go back and watch that. You know what we need to do? I've just been putting it off because it's kind of a huge endeavor, just because there's so many installments. We've never done Star Wars on my channel. We probably need to eventually do that, just because I haven't done it. I mean, it's kind of weird to be It's like to have a movie podcast, but you've not done Star Wars. You've done everything else. So, yeah, we probably should do Star Wars. I might actually just skip the Disney ones because those are just trash, dude. So, the first three and then the Hayden Christensen 3, which actually has a pretty sophisticated geopolitical based plot. If you don't know, it's actually Lord Voldemort talks about it all the time. It's actually true. Troy Orthodox, $10. In many ways, this world is actually already run by corporations. You're absolutely correct. Fiat money as shares that are held by the citizens as shareholders of supranational currencies like the euro and the bundled corporate blocks. You're absolutely correct, Troy. That's very perceptive. And by the way, that's why we support Bitcoin. If you didn't hear the other day, we did part 2 for the members of Saifedean's classic book, The Bitcoin Standard. So that is in the member section. If you missed it, go check that out. And I think it would be fun to do Star Wars just because it's very different, in terms of the vibe and what it's about. It's not this kind of dark, nihilistic, neo-Gnostic, Luciferian stuff that you have in the Alien franchise. But anyway, so I did enjoy revisiting this series. I think that it's pretty obvious that the series is not just about body horror and human population, depopulation, all that. It's also about that I didn't catch until I watched it this time, even though I put it in the book. I just forgot. They're using the literary motifs of Ripley going to hell and back, and I didn't really catch that until I watched it this time, and I was paying attention to all the references to Dante's Inferno and this kind of stuff, especially in Alien 3. So in this trilogy, she dies, goes into the abyss, and she's reborn through fire like a phoenix, right? Because after Alien 3, in Jean-Pierre Jeunet's Alien Resurrection, she's reborn. And to keep with this corporate theme, by the way, which not many people have noted or caught, did you notice in Alien Resurrection? It's actually in the screenplay. There's a reference to one of the corporations in the future is Walmart. I thought that was really funny, which I'm sure they did that on purpose, just kind of as a joke. But remember Alien Resurrection, written by Joss Whedon, by the way, who quite often includes MK Ultra, Trigger, mind control, assassination stuff in his films, in his stories. It's always there, all the way even back to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Ripley is now a new dark Gnostic savior figure goddess. She is cloned, and that's how resurrection occurs. She's also a super soldier, so you get the MK Ultra super soldier aspect of it as well. As we said, she's the 8th instantiation of the cloned versions of Ripley, and she's the one that's a success, hence 8th being the day of resurrection. The secret to transhumanism actually ended up being hybrids, not AI, not the xenomorphs per se, but blending the two and using transhumanism or using biometrics, bioengineering. So I guess Weyland-Yutani ends up being right, and it's not really AI, except I don't remember. Maybe there's some AI component to it. Maybe it's all three. Maybe Ripley is a AI, genetic, xenomorph, human, transhumanist clone. I don't know. I don't remember, but another interesting aspect in the film was it makes a reference to autism. Not many movies throughout the 90s, I have found a few, made reference to autism, but this is one of them. Another one of the oddball films that references autism that you might not expect is Exorcist 2, which is one of the worst movies of all time, according to a lot of people. And yet, when they make an explicit reference to MK Ultra, did you know at the beginning of Exorcist 2, they're actually doing MK Ultra studies, one of which was studying people who were possessed. So the girl that's possessed, Linda Blair or whatever, in Exorcist 2, there's some secret government program where she's being studied along with a bunch of children with autism. Interesting. Did you see the Ben Affleck Autism Assassin program movie? Interesting. So it seems like there's something going on with studies of autism, and if we can create humans that don't have any emotions and they're like robots, maybe they'd be good assassins. Well, that's exactly what's going on in Alien 4, Alien Resurrection. And although they do reference Walmart as somehow being in the year 2300 or whatever, what rules the galaxy in that one is United Systems Military. So there's some sort of a corporate military dictatorship. And it's back to scientism. It's all about scientism again. And once again, we learn the scientism proponents never learn their lesson. And they end up almost wiping out humanity because the aliens are once again going to return to Earth. But thankfully, Winona Ryder and Alien Ripley suck the goo baby out of the cargo unit, which is a really funny scene. Every time I watch that scene, it gets funnier and funnier because he's like trying to say mama, but he sounds like a retarded person, and he's getting like vacuum sucked out of the airlock. It's pretty funny actually when you watch it. I don't know if it's supposed to be funny, but it actually is pretty funny. Bobby C, $10. I have actually come to appreciate your movie streams analysis more after watching movies like Cabin in the Woods and Ghost in the Shell and trying my own movie analysis. Hey, we'll create the board game. You could do this at home. You want to do Jay's analysis? Do Jay's analysis at home. Do your own movie analysis. Yeah, these are fun, man. There's nothing more fun for me than doing the movie analyses or writing, the Sam Hyde show. Those are like the funnest types of things. The live events are a lot of fun too. I have a lot of fun doing those. But anyway, moving on, as we continue with the theme of mind control, I didn't really expect John Wick Ballerina to be this explicit in terms of the same themes. Obviously, there's nothing to do with aliens. However, we did do a John Wick podcast some years back, if you are interested in those, because really this is kind of the last, how could we put it, masculine action series that still is ongoing. If you go back to the 80s and 90s, the male action hero archetype character, the Bruce Willis, the Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Keanu Reeves, whoever else, Jason Statham. I mean, I guess Jason Statham still is kind of doing this. It still continues with him. But the rise of the girl bosses and the girl assassins and the slay queens has basically taken over the action genre as well, to the extent that there's not much. There was the Expendables, and then Keanu's about the last one holding down the fort for dudes, right? to have the kind of the badass masculine. What about the new Jean-Claude Van Damme? You mean his TV show? That was great. We actually did a whole JCVD podcast, by the way. But JCVD is not in Blockbuster. They intentionally don't want. They call it, because they'll say it's toxic masculinity. So they have to have girl boss heroes and girls in all the masculine roles, which is ridiculous. By the way, the JCVD that we did was one of the funnest podcasts. We had a blast doing that one. And Jamie and I did that because Jamie had never seen any Van Damme movies. So I made her basically do the entire Van Damme canon with me. And it only got like 10,000 views, but it was a lot of fun. So here is Van Damme-aganza. We did Bloodsport, Universal Soldier, Time Cop, JCVD. And we talked about, if you didn't know, in his TV show, which is really good, by the way, he plays Jean-Claude Van Damme as a person working for the CIA. Interesting. Hollywood actors working for the CIA. There might be something to that. So going back to John Wick, we covered the series a while back, and we talked about the history of real-world assassins. So I'm not going to go back rehearsing real-world assassin themes. You can go watch that podcast here if you're a John Wick fan. Because there's a little more symbolism. I mean, we've got references to Orthodox Christianity. John Wick is basically Orthodox, which is odd. he's put under the tutelage of a Ruma Ruska, which I'd never heard of this, but Romanian, Russian, not Romanian, Rumai, gypsy Russians gypsies who have a crime network training facility to train assassins. And in this one, it's not about John Wick, but about a girl whose dad was trying to escape a cult. And we don't know much about this cult originally, except that they are coming to get rid of the dad, and the daughter sees all this right before her dad gives her a music box with a ballerina in it. And what do you know, turns out she ends up placed in the same assassin guild group that John Wick is put into, run by this network of Ruma Ruska, which apparently is a real thing. I didn't know that. Gypsies in Russia. And right away I was like, wait a minute, this is fascinating, because this is very similar to Red Sparrow. If you remember, Red Sparrow had Jennifer J. Law. Are they making a part 2 of that? And this, of course, was anti-Russian propaganda, of course, which, by the way, came out right before the Russian conflict. Interesting timing there, isn't it? But if you saw this movie, then you recall, and I think we did a podcast on this back in the day, same scenario. She's recruited into being a, I guess, FSB, or, I mean, when she goes to her spy training, it literally looks like Stalin era, like, KGB times, NKVD or something. And she's actually trained as a swallow, right? So she's a honey trap sex operative for Russian intelligence. It looks like it's modern times, but then when you watch the movie, it's like, is this 1979 Russia? Like, when is this taking place? But actually, it's modern times. So very much a propaganda film, anti-Russian type of film, preparing us for what happened. But she is recruited and placed within the scenario of the ballerina world. And that there is some history to that has actually happened. Certain people like Olga Chekova was believed to be, Stalin's key spy. She was a opera singer, so she was in the arts. And here we have Ana de Armas. She is also placed into ballerina school. And it's almost like this might have been planned, because her dad gave her the music box with a dancing ballerina. And so she ends up in ballerina school, and she happens one day to see John Wick showing up, and she realizes that she's in the same sort of assassin guild as John Wick. Now, if you listen, we actually talked recently about the Andre Bustamante interview, where he was talking about recruitment for CIA, and he said that the CIA actually looks for damaged people, and they look for people who might have undergone some sort of trauma. So again, this is actually accurate. He admits that, and in this case, Ana de Armas has lost her dad. She saw him get killed. And when she's placed into this, what they call, I think they call it a coven. She's brought into a coven, the Roma Ruska coven. They refer to the Slavic goddess Kikimora. I never heard of this. I didn't know there was a Slavic goddess called Kikimora. Kikimora is a legendary house spirit in Slavic mythology. Her role in the house is juxtaposed with that of the domovoi. Kikimora can be either good or bad, depending upon the behavior of the homeowner. And so they refer to Ana de Armas as the Kikimora. And so at one point, her handlers actually say, you can actually be life or death. It's flip sides of the same coin. which is explicitly the Gnostic view. So there's not really good or evil. You determine good or evil based on your will, the will of the Magus, the magician. So here we have the idea of the assassin is kind of like not just a Kikimora, but kind of like a god, because an assassin determines whether you live or whether you die. This comes up quite a few times in the film, by the way, where eventually she faces off against John Wick himself, and she has to kind of defer to him as the higher entity on the totem pole, and he says, I will give you till midnight tonight before I decide whether I kill you or not. So the assassin kind of functions like the magus or the magician to grant life or to take life. Whereas in Scripture, of course, we know God alone has the power of life or death. But the ballerina aspect of this, and I have to give credit to Jamie for this because I actually forgot about another film with a very similar theme that is actually about trauma-based mind control, if you've never seen it. And the reason that we know that is not just because it's kind of explicit in the movie, but it's Darren Aronofsky, right? So if you remember, Black Swan also has Natalie Portman brought into this insanely rigorous ballerina training program run by Vincent Cassel, who basically breaks her down and mind controls her into competing with Mila Kunis to be the best ballerina person or whatever. And so there must be some connection between the I don't know anything about ballerinas or ballerina school, but there must be something about the painful endurance that's necessary for being a ballerina or something, and the almost military-like treatment that the trainer or the handler does to create this super ballerina, super soldier. So it seems to become a pretty fascinating parallel between the world of a spy and a hitman, an assassin, or something like that, and a person training to be a ballerina. So we thought that we wouldn't have feminism invading the world of John Wick until we get ballerina. But I mean, just as an action movie, this is actually a pretty good action movie. But what's annoying about it is that, of course, they had to have the feminist name where she's called the ball crusher, right? Because throughout her fights, when she's about to lose, she basically just punches and kicks dudes in the balls. So that's like her secret weapon is to be the ball crusher, which is to just kick dudes in the balls. And it's like, I mean, so is that really what a slay queen is like somebody that just cheats in a fight and kicks in the balls, I guess. Oh, I forgot. Keanu is Baba Yaga, which is another Slavic spirit. Also similar to Kikimora, in that Baba Yaga can be a male or a female, with a dual nature, as fearsome and cannibalistic, but also a wise, powerful guide, which I guess that makes sense with what Keanu is as the greatest assassin. But also it's sort of like, it's weird, right? Like what does this have to do with Keanu Reeves? But I mean, when you think of Keanu Reeves, you don't think of like Slavic witch spirits. It's really bizarre, but all of that is not even the weirdest part of this movie, which is that Gabriel Byrne, who is also a sort of an assassin himself in Ballerina, Gabriel Byrne runs a cult from which, it turns out, Anna de Armas was originally intended to head up. And so the reason that her dad was killed by Gabriel Byrne is because Gabriel Byrne lives in Germany, in Austria or somewhere. Of course, everything evil in the whole world, everything evil is German. Of course, like Germans and Russians are the only sources of evil in the world. Nothing else in the world is evil except for Germans and Russians. That's it. And of course, the world's worst cult is in some idyllic village in Austria. We have this alchemical battle and multiple. I mean, literally, it's alchemical, multiple sequences where you have fire and ice, fire and water, fighting, squaring off. We saw in the John Wick analysis, by the way, in the 4th installment, it ended up being about his heart and alchemy. And so he went to the Church of the Sacred Heart. Very alchemical stuff going on. Very bizarre. Not what you would expect in an assassination movie. But it turns out the cult is a practicing cult of human sacrifice. So there's actually a guild of assassins that aren't just assassins. They're actually cultists who ritually murder. And they end up in this battle with the Romaruska guild of John Wick and Ana de Armas. This reminds me of, interviews that I've done where we've talked to people who discuss the fact that there actually are, some of the people who are into being hitmen and assassins have actually been Satanists and occultists. Makes perfect sense, right? What better, if you believe in and worship Satan, then you probably would be, doing something like being a hitman or an assassin, because taking people's lives is part of your ritual process. In fact, Ana de Armas' name is actually Eve, and we find out that her she and her sister were going to head up this cult. Gabriel Byrne is the dad, and he is not happy with either of them, and decides, okay, I'm just going to kill them both. Everyone in this cult is marked with a giant burn, they're branded, right? Who else branded? Oh, Crowley. Crowley brands people. Did you know that? Crowley would brand his women. These people in the cult are all branded with an X. And according to Crowley, the X in the Crowleyan system is the mark of the beast. I'm not saying X actually is the mark of the beast. It's the mark of the beast according to what Crowley thought in his system. And the reason he thought that was that Jamie has an image of it in one of her books, is like, you can diagram all directions and sequences in a 3D model in all directions, and it ends up making an X. So it's sort of like all directions of the world in the Crowleyan Mark of the Beast model ends up looking like an X. And so I guess we're supposed to assume, even though it's not explicit, that Gabriel Byrne's Crowleyan assassination cult that uses the X as the mark of the beast is the villain that has to be stopped. And of course, Ana de Armas and Kinko Reeves together stop the beast. So, not what I expected. I just thought this was going to be some goofy action movie. I was like, this is wild. What did you guys think? I'm not into the girl boss stuff, but I forgot to mention her tattoo. She has to get tattooed, right? Because the tattoos all have significance. She gets Lux in Tenebrae on her back, which is light and darkness. Gnostic. Right. Flip sides of the same coin, light and darkness themes. So, nothing too surprising there. They actually say childhood pain is necessary for our recruits. That's exactly what Andrew Bustamante says. Another weird thing, that she gets another tattoo, which is a woman angel on a cross, which is Gnostic, obviously. And it reminded me of the vision that non-Saint Francis of Assisi. Do you remember when we covered his supposed vision of a crucified angel? This alone should tell you that, he's like the most famous of all the Roman Catholic saints. He claims to see visions of crucified seraphim, which in Orthodoxy would be like Prelest 101. This alone should tell you this is not true, right? But he has this vision of, I wonder if anybody's ever tried to draw it, because I want to compare that to the tattoo that she gets. Yeah. So here's the nonsensical crucified seraphim vision. I mean, angels weren't crucified for us. That makes no sense. Okay. It's the supposed vision that Francis of Assisi has. Let's see if it showed her tattoo again. Now, I don't know that they would have chose. It's just an odd image. Why they chose that, I have no idea. But let me see if I can go back to that. Okay. I know they had a picture of her getting a tattoo. Because it says Lux and Tenebris. And it has the female angel on a cross. Where was it? Oh, here it is. Oh, so it just showed Lux and Tenebris. It doesn't show the tattoo that she gets. I wonder if we could see if we can find a picture of it. Yeah, here we go. So it's like an angel woman on a cross. Really bizarre. Let's see. It's hard to find a good picture of it. Yeah. Or she's standing in front of the cross. She's not on the cross. It's hard to make it out. No, wait, she is. It's a crucified angel, isn't it? Yeah, it is. But is that a guy or I can't tell if it's a guy or a girl. It kind of looks like a girl, but I can't tell. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, here's a TikTok on it. Let's see what it says.
I do have two.
You do?
Very small. I don't know if I would be brave.
You have to get a tattoo on your back. And I was wondering if you have any tattoos of your own.
I do have two.
You do?
Very small. I don't know if I would be brave enough to get a tattoo and cover my entire back.
What tattoos do you have?
I have a little moon here.
Nice.
And a little heart here.
Very cute.
I need a third one.
This soy dude trying to talk to her. Could you imagine? Like,
Look.
A really big one.
Yeah, I think you should get the one from the film.
look at this guy. Look at that nose ring. What the heck is going on with this guy?
On your back.
Oh, that'd be too much.
The stunts were amazing in the film. And I was wondering, did you do your own stunts at all?
Most of it.
Most of it.
I do.
Okay, I thought they were going to talk about the actual freaking tattoo.
Odds and, like,
This is not talking about
really
anything.
The
This is
action. Your stunt
stupid.
double has to whack.
Anyway, you get the idea. It looks as if... Still can't really make it out. Does that look like that? Kinda. Anyway, enough of that. You get the idea. But I mean, if it was some kind of loose reference to this, it wouldn't have anything to do with Catholicism. It would obviously have to do with like the Gnostic reinterpretation of Catholic symbology, except that in this case, St. Francis's vision is actually probably Gnostic. So it's like, actually is Catholic Gnosticism right here, which is crazy. Anyway. Yeah, that nerdy guy, he could use some of his spider riz to hit on Ana de Armas in that exchange. Let's see. Is that it? Guys, remember we have a show sponsor, Chalk.com. Head on over to Chalk.com. Use promo code JAY40 to get 40% off all your all the greatest, most excellentest of all time products at Chalk.com. When it comes to supplementation, especially the Tonkat Ali, you can get that performance stack for 40% off using the promo code JAY40 to get again 40% off. JAY40, J40, 40% off. Yeah, he needs to learn some spider riz, otherwise he's done. He's cooked. He'll never get If all that nerdy dude had to do was spit some spider game, and he would have got Anna de Armas's number. Oh wait, I gotta make sure I didn't miss super chats over here. H Brazzi, $5. LMFAO. These Wiggas watched your Pope of the Future skit. They decided to make a real one with Galians. They better send those royalties in Bitcoin. Exactly. Yeah, the people that made Alien, they watched the Pope of the Future skit. They figured out this is real. Dark Sickle, $49.49, $1. Now that you mention it, it's pretty funny how common the arc of safety for the elite trope is. Exactly. It's in the movie Greenland, yes. Don't Look Up, yes. 2012, yes. In fact, there's quite a few movie references. Moonraker, James Bond is about that. Because Hugo Drax in the movie version is going to depopulate everybody and then, like Jeff Stein McCaffrey, reseed the world with a bunch of chicks. That's the plot of the movie Moonraker. Reminds me of Apocalypse 6. Brendan, $3. Have you considered doing work with Critical Drinker? I mean, I'm always open to any collabs. I don't know Critical Drinker or any, I don't know most of these people, so I don't know. I mean, I'm open to that kind of stuff. What does Critical Drinker do? We need to do a Black Swan analysis. I never did do that one either. I mentioned it in one of the books, but I didn't do it. Critical Drinker. Does he do...
We often talk these days about
he does movie analysis. See what he says about Alien Earth.
I've been on quite the roller coaster ride with Alien Earth. The moment the show was announced, my reaction was, wait, what? You're making another Alien prequel? Jesus, this franchise has been Brendan Gleeson so hard that Arthur Fleck must feel bad for it.
Oh, does he just make fun of them? Yeah, that's right up my alley. Glitchy Rhythm, $5. Goofy, silly Billy question. Who is the coolest girl boss that actually holds up? I liked the Underworld. Yeah, I like Kate Beckinsale Underworld, okay. Tomb Raider on PS1. Yeah, Tomb Raider's fun games. What's the best girl boss movies? I mean, Luc Besson is a feminist, but I'm assume, but his movies are pretty good. I mean, he almost always has girl bosses. La Femme Nikita is great. I mean, Anna is kind of dirty, but I thought it was a pretty good movie. Lucy is Stupid. I can't decide if I like or don't like Fifth Element. Let's see, what else? Columbiana was pretty good. Point of No Return is MK Ultra. I don't know if I'd say it's good, but it's like another remake of La Femme Nikita. So, I mean, as girl boss movies go, I would say probably this is one of the best. It's just a really good spy movie if you've never seen it. I mean, it's over the top and ridiculous, but it's really good. I mean, Resident Evil movies are stupid, but I like those quite a bit. Guilty pleasure movies. Jeremiah the Struggler, $10. Shut up, nerd. Oh, we did that one. Making sure I didn't miss these. Here we go. Dark Sickle, $49.49, $2. Did you see the Dave Franco movie Together? Yeah, in fact, I did a video on it. If you come over here to my videos, right there. Weapons and Together, right there. 3 weeks ago. So I did a breakdown of it. It was pretty wild, pretty dark, demented, esoteric. Ranklement 58, $10. I'm going to show my kid his first movie. I'm thinking it should be Return to Oz or The 2010 Alice in Wonderland. What is the 2010 Alice in Wonderland? Oh, you're talking about the Johnny Depp one. Tim Burton. I think Jamie and I did a podcast on that. I think we did. I don't remember when. I don't know which of these is I mean, Return to Oz, I grew up with it. It's a crazy, trippy thing. We did a podcast on that with BLA. So I would probably say Return to Oz. I'm not sure that I'm not sure that Tim Burton one is any good. You know what I mean? Like, but we did a great breakdown right here. The esoteric meaning of Return to Oz, and that was 2 years ago. 20,000 views. That's pretty good for a movie stream. So check that one out. I was looking forward to it because I thought, back in the 90s, Tim Burton did a lot of great classic movies, but I don't know if that one's that good. It's not terrible. Anyway, Troy the Docks, $5. Troy Throdocs. In a time of ancient gods, warlords, and kings, in a land of turmoil, it cried out for a hero. She was Xena, the mighty princess, forged in the heat of battle. I never watched Xena, Warrior Princess. I remember when that was super popular, when that was out. I just didn't watch it. I'll tell you the best girl boss series, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That's the best one. Yeah, we did a podcast on that too. Jamie and I did. I mean, there's some annoying woke shit in it, but it's still pretty good. So dang, that was 5 years ago. That's crazy. 4 or 5. Appreciate those super chats, you guys. A lot of fun here. Let's see. Max Pacheco, $10. Jay, I'm 19. I'll be baptized in the Orthodox Church Saturday. Your content was very helpful throughout my catechism. Thank you. Hey, man, many years to you. Love hearing those stories. That's great. And people might diss the movie stuff, but a lot of people come over here when they see a movie analysis, and then they stay for the Orthodox stuff. So talking about all this other stuff isn't a bad thing. It's actually a funnel. The Buffy the Vampire to Orthodoxy pipeline, baby. That's what I'm talking about. Anyway, and yes, there is woke, there's left, there's Skittle stuff in Buffy, but it's still, Joss Whedon was a good writer for shows and series. He was good at it. I'm not saying his politics is good. It's just ridiculous. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the revisiting the Alien franchise, the Alien series. Hope you liked touching on the trauma-based mind control assassin cult Crowleyan elements of John Wick Ballerina. Otherwise, be sure and support the stream by going over to chalk.com, use promo code J40, get 40% off. Otherwise, everybody have a good night, and I will see you later.